Welcome to Professor Burkett's lesson on verbals, a term referring to infinitives, gerunds, and participles, which are not verbs but derived from verbs. And this is another lesson in the art of grammar, or what the Greeks called techne grammatikae. Well, verbals are not verbs. That's the first lesson and point about verbals. In form, verbals derive from verbs, look like verbs, but are not verbs. And they begin verbal phrases. So to practice punctuation well, one needs to know about verbals. In function, verbals carry characteristics of verbs. Expanded languages vocabulary function as nouns, adjectives, and adverbs, depending on the verbal. And verbal phrases serve as noun phrases, adjective phrases, and adverb phrases. So form and function are two important categories when thinking about language and literature. There are three kinds of verbals, as I've mentioned. There are infinitives, gerunds, and participles. Let's look at some examples. To perfect a draft, writers should revise and edit carefully. Here, to perfect is the infinitive, the to form of the verb. Gerunds. Writing is seldom easy, but always rewarding, where writing and rewarding are examples of gerunds. They function as a noun, and as nouns they're capable of being the grammatical subject of the sentence and an object. And participles, the fascinating narrative held the reader's attention, where fascinating is a participle or a verbal adjective that modifies narrative. First, infinitives. Infinitives are the to form of a verb. Moreover, an infinitive is considered one word. So careful writers try to not split, that's not correct, not to split infinitives. It's okay now and then to split an infinitive. For instance, in Star Trek, their mission is to boldly go. So it's okay to split an infinitive with an adverb, usually an ly verb. Example, to effectively narrate, writers use poetic figures. But it's better, especially for older readers or more formal writing, to not split the infinitive with an adverb. Example, to narrate effectively, writers use poetic figures. Well, an infinitive can function as a noun, adjective, or adverb to help clarity. Well, what's the function in the infinitive above? Well, writers often don't ask that question and don't really care, but if you're doing analysis, it's helpful to recognize that to help is an adverb and it modifies the verb function or can function. Second, gerunds. Gerunds are words that end in ing, such as writing is a tool for thinking. So writing and thinking are nouns in this sentence. And so gerunds always function as nouns. Examples, his favorite sport is running. Running is a noun. Good writers are skilled at reading and assessing text because writers are their own first readers, where reading and assessing are nouns. They look like verbs, they end in ing, but they're not verbs. They're verbals. They function as nouns. Third, participles. Well, participles take two forms. There's the present participle, which ends in ing, so they're ing words, and past participles, the ed or en words usually. And a species of past participle is the past perfect participle. So perfect participles are derived from past participles with the word having plus an ed or en type words. Participles always function as adjectives. They are verbal adjectives, that's what you might call them. So example of a present participle, the crying child, where crying modifies child. Or a past participle, the written word, where written is a participle modifying word. And also perfect participles, having written, that might modify the grammatical subject of a sentence. Example participles. Remember, participles are verbal adjectives. Removing his coat, where removing is the participle and removing his coat is the participle phrase. Jack ran to the water. And so as a verbal adjective, removing his coat modifies Jack. So Jack is the one removing the coat. That's an important point, and I belabor that because we'll come back to that later when it comes to dangling participles. Susan saw her cousin walking along the shoreline. Walking is the participle. Walking along the shoreline is a participle phrase, and it modifies the noun cousin. Children introduced to music early develop strong intellectual skills. So introduced, the participle. I've underlined the participle phrase, and it modifies children. Being a runner, Paul knew the importance of disciplined, sustained exercise. So being is the participle. I've underlined the participle phrase, and this modifies the grammatical subject Paul. Having sung in the rain, she thought she was Fräulein Maria from The Sound of Music. Well, having sung is the past participle, the past perfect participle, and this modifies she, the agent in the sentence. Well, dangling participle. Let's take a look at some example participles that are dangling. Well, reading and relaxing on the beach. A snake suddenly slithered by Sarah's blanket. Huh? Well, who is reading and relaxing on the beach? Well, according to the grammar of the sentence, it's the snake. Of course, as you read this, you visualize something different, but the grammar indicates that the snake is taking a vacation. So dangling participles can be high comedy. So we need to apply the fitting rule. The grammatical subject must fit or be capable of performing the verbal action. So let's rewrite this. Reading and relaxing on the beach, Susan jumped up when a snake suddenly slithered by her blanket. Okay, that makes sense. So Susan is capable of reading and relaxing on the beach, not the snake. Another dangling participle. Well, we call this a dangling modifier because it begins with the subordinating conjunction while, but it's really the participle driving that dangles here. Okay, while driving to the store, the baby started crying. Well, who in the world is driving to the store? The baby? Well, according to the grammar of the sentence, the baby is driving the car. Sounds like some dangerous streets. Well, we need to apply the fitting rule. And when we do, the revised sentence looks like this. While driving to the store, Jerry heard his baby start to cry. So grammatically now that makes sense. So Jerry is capable of performing the action of driving. Another dangling participle. Having finished the assignment, the soccer game was started. Okay, well, who has finished the assignment? Well, the soccer game did, according to the grammar of the sentence, but we know better. So, we need to apply the fitting rule. And we need to create an agent because was started is in the passive voice, and so we need to insert an agent that's not in the sentence here, but is implied by the sentence. Having finished his assignment, Joe joined his team just as the soccer game started. Okay, so Joe is capable of finishing the assignment. The verbal adjective, or the participle, is capable of modifying. So let's recap verbals. Verbals are not verbs. They are other kinds of speeches, like nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Infinitives. Gerunds are always nouns, and participles are always adjectives. Let's look at an example again of all three. To give is better than to receive, writes the apostle, quoting Jesus, where to give is the infinitive. Critical thinking and writing are essential skills, where thinking and writing in this sentence are gerunds, they're nouns. And laughing, they decided to try again, where laughing is an adjective, modifying they. Let's look at a practice quiz. Can you identify the verbals in the block quotation? And this happens to be the Great Commission. Well, let's identify the verbals, infinitives, gerunds, and participles in this block quotation. Therefore, having gone, and having gone is a past perfect participle that modifies the implied subject of the main action verb, which is make. And make is the only main action verb in this sentence. So having gone or as you're going might be a good translation. There are 3 present participles: baptizing, teaching, and seeing. And to hold fast is an infinitive. And so we have one main verb or command, make disciples, modified by, it looks like 4 verbals here. So thank you for your attention. I look forward to seeing you in class where we will apply these exercises and apply the lesson on